Hi there YouTube, it's XtremeTrainz here. This video isn't a review per se because it's kind of hard to review films like, films, I should say, because obviously that usually requires you to kind of go step by step and, deconstruct all the scenes and the storylines. And as you would have guessed from the title of this video, the film we're talking about is this one, Thomas and the Magic Railroad, which is 20 years old, and there's a bunch of other reviews about it. So what this review is going to cover is kind of talk a little bit about the bonus features that are included with this edition of the film, and then whether or not, whether you're a fan of this movie or not, you should pick it up. So we're not actually going to be showing any footage in this review. It's just going to be my face. Sorry. Partly for copyright reasons and partly because I don't want to spoil anything in here. But yeah, stay tuned. We're going to talk about this DVD/Blu-ray right here. What are we waiting for? Let's do it. Don't know about Thomas and the Magic Railroad. That's essentially Thomas's only real movie, and it came out in 2000, so it's 20 years ago, which is why this is the 20th anniversary edition. It was a giant failure in terms of financial liability, and it's essentially the reason why Britt Allcroft, who originally created the TV series, got kicked off the show. And if you ask me, it sounds like that this was kind of the end, the beginning of the end of the good old days of Thomas. It came out about the time of Series 5, and then that was pretty much, after that is when we started to get Hit coming along, and then later on Mattel. And we all know that Mattel has really handled Thomas in interesting ways since acquiring the license. So what is this DVD? Essentially, it's two, and you can see it in here. You get two. You get a DVD and a Blu-ray copy. The same content is on both, so that's something to keep in mind. If you don't have a Blu-ray player, that's fine. The other thing is that currently this is only being released in the US. Why that is true, I don't really understand. Because as we know, Thomas is originally a British, show. So I don't really know why that's happening. If you would have seen some of the posts I put on the community tab of YouTube, I did actually email Mattel Australia asking if this was going to be released, and they didn't reply to me for a month, and then I chased them up again a couple of times, and they said they had no plans to release it in Australia. So I'm not quite sure why they're doing that. It seems very strange to me that it's not even being released in the UK, but thankfully through Amazon US, you can purchase this. And I purchased it for about $50 Australian, including shipping, which I understand is obviously expensive. But yeah, that did include shipping as well. What that means in terms of, if you've got the DVD, it is a Region 1 or A, depending if it's Blu-ray or DVD. So it won't work in a lot of Australian players unless you get a multi-region one, or I actually have a DVD player that plugs into your computer, and that one actually read the disc. So that's something to keep in mind. That it is a bit difficult to get your hands on a copy of this film, but the question is it worth it? And I can say, after having watched all of the special features, absolutely. I've been, involved in terms of, keeping up to date and signing all the petitions about the director's cut since discovering that the director's cut was a thing. If you don't know what it's about, this film does a great job of explaining, or the special features do a great job of explaining essentially what happened. But the long story short is that essentially the original version of the movie was about 2 hours long, and they cut about 50 minutes worth of footage out, which essentially cut a whole storyline out. And that's how they refer to it on this DVD. It's called the deleted storyline. And they talk about that a lot in the special features. And they do actually include all those deleted scenes on the DVD, which is really cool. But essentially, yeah, test audiences thought that the human bad character, P.T. Boomer, was too scary. So Britt was essentially, and this is where I think it's quite interesting, told by the executives of the company, you need to cut him out because people don't like him. And the kids don't like him, and so she did have to do that, which is why a lot of things in the story are strange. It's why a lot of people said the human characters didn't make a lot of sense. And I think having now watched the deleted storyline, the movie suddenly to me is so much better and makes so much more sense. Even just one-liners and plot lines that are talked about in the original film, which as a kid I didn't understand. They don't make sense because they were set in a context where there were other scenes that had meant to explain them. So what do you actually get then? You get like a 40-minute documentary, which is produced with Britt Allcroft today. So it's obviously been filmed in the last year or two. I'm not exactly sure when. And that's really interesting. She does a lot of talking about the director's cut and how she had to cut it out and how that actually made her quite upset. And it was actually kind of sad to watch, to be honest, because you could see that she really obviously cared a lot about this film, cared a lot about the Thomas franchise, And there's another interview with Alec Baldwin on there, which I think is also really interesting. He also talks about the director's cut and has some interesting comments where he kind of essentially says that, it sounded like the executives just didn't believe in Brit, and despite the fact that she'd obviously made Thomas incredibly successful, they just didn't really think she knew what she was doing. And he kind of said that it was really unfair on her, that they kind of just said, nah, we don't like it, change this, change that, cut that out, and he didn't like it at all. And he could tell, it was interesting to see that he also noticed what was happening. There's also an interview with Mara Wilson, who is Lily in the film, which I thought was really interesting. I didn't realize that was on there, and she had some really interesting stuff to talk about in terms of what it was like to do the film, but also that she herself wasn't really told about the director's cut thing happening. So she said that when she watched the final version of the film, she was actually quite upset because a lot of her character development and a lot of her storyline with her grandfather, which is Burnett Stone, got cut out of the film, and it never really got explained to her. So it was interesting hearing her talking about it and saying that she'd spent a lot of time getting involved in that. And again, that actually did make me a little bit sad because, you can tell that all the people involved with this film really did want to make a good film, really cared about the storyline. They cared about Thomas. They wanted to make something that was, Thomas, but, in a new way. And it's, you can tell they're all quite upset that what ended up being the thing that everyone saw was not the original plan for the movie. There's an interview with Diddy Conn, which is interesting. She is the, Stacey Jones from Shining Time Station. Doesn't reveal much about the director's cut, but it's interesting to hear her. I thought she was a really cool character. There is an interview with the composer, and he again talks a lot about the director's cut, and has some interesting things to say about that, and also about how he kind of came up with the music. That's interesting. There's a behind the scenes reel, which is like not really that interesting, especially because they use a lot of the behind the scenes reel when they're talking about the interviews with people. There is the deleted scene reel. There's that one deleted scene with Junior and the ice cream. It goes for about 30 seconds. It's been online for a little while. So you've probably already seen that one if you know about the director's cut. And the thing that everyone wanted was a deleted storyline. When they said they were including this, I didn't quite understand what they've done. But what they've essentially done is stitched together all the scenes that were cut from the film, and they've put them in sequential order. So you don't have, unfortunately, we don't have a full version of the film, if that makes sense. But I'm sure some people are going to now go away and try and make one. But yeah, they do put together all of the shots they've got. There are parts where the shots are incomplete. So it says things on the screen like shot missing. Or where they've got, people to do voiceovers. So for example, the intro and the conclusion were never fully completed. So you hear Britt Allcroft like kind of giving the voiceover and over the storyboard because it wasn't completed. But that to me was really amazing to watch. It goes for about an hour, because they do kind of tail in. So you see like kind of a lot of times you see the bit of the film that was there, then it transitions to the part that was cut out, and then you see a little bit of what was after, so you can kind of work out where all the scenes were. And it's so interesting. The storyline with Burnett is so much more, it makes so much more sense, why he's so sad, and the story there makes so much more sense in that version of the film. I think P.T. Boomer is just ridiculous. Like he's exactly what Britt Allcroft says in the interview he was supposed to be. He's obviously a bad guy, and he's a bit creepy, but he's like just so silly that you just don't... He's not scary. He's just silly. But I think he's really interesting because he does create some interesting conflict in the film. I think there's enough... I think would be scary enough to little kids, but I don't think he's any scarier than, for example, I think it's Funky Town or something, where there's that evil guy with the blue outfit. I'll put the name on the screen in this video so you can know who I'm talking about. But I don't think he's any more evil than most of the like kind of cartoonish evil characters in kids' films. So I don't really know why kids found him particularly scary, because I just don't think he is very scary. So it's just strange, but it does really explain the whole Magic Railroad thing a lot better. Just the whole universe of the movie makes a lot more sense. What I will say is that they don't really cut out... There's no Thomas material that got cut out of the film. So all the Thomas material that was ever shot, essentially, is in the film. So if you were expecting like there to be more Thomas time, there is not more Thomas time. and having these scenes in the movie would have made there to be like less Thomas time compared to just people time. Which I know was one of the big criticisms of the movie at the time. I know it's one of the reasons my parents hated Thomas and the Magic Railroad, which is really interesting. They obviously had to watch it with me when it came out in cinemas, and obviously watch the DVD the VHS actually when I was a kid many times, obviously in the background. And they were like, I don't understand why you like it. It has all those stupid people from Shining Time. And I think that was because Shining Time was an American thing and didn't really show in Australia or the UK as far as I'm aware. So there was a lot of new characters if you weren't American watching Thomas and the Magic Railroad. But I always loved that. I thought that was interesting and different. So yeah, I think it was really, really interesting to watch the deleted storylines. They're not film quality. A lot of the audio is like the original audio that they've obviously taken, like that was recorded on the day. It hasn't been edited. The quality is really bad. If you're watching it, you'll see it. It looks it's really grainy, and it looks like it was shot, 20 years ago and hasn't been digitized or anything like that. So if you're wondering now that this has been released, like, can we get a director's cut of the film? The answer is just no. The quality of the material that we've got, it just doesn't exist. And for example, the composer of the movie actually says, I never got to do any scoring for the old version of the film because that had already been cut out by the time they were doing the soundtrack, finalizing the soundtrack. So, even if they did do a director's cut, it would be, for example, missing the soundtrack because they didn't compose any music for the soundtrack. So I think we're not going to get a director's cut of Thomas and the Magic Railroad. This is absolutely the closest thing we're going to get, but I definitely think it's amazing. If you are a fan of this movie, you should absolutely pick this movie up. Do whatever you got to do to watch it if you're not in America, in your region. You should absolutely do that because I just think it's really, really nice. It gives a great perspective on the film. It's obviously cool to get the film on Blu-ray if you actually enjoy the film like I do as well. And I just think it people talk about nostalgia and, my childhood. This movie really was genuinely my childhood. Like, it came out when I was like 5 or 4. I think 5 in Australia. For some reason, it came out way later. Back in the day, movies used to come out way later in Australia. So I think it actually did come out like the year after almost. And, being able to watching these deleted scenes, I've watched them over the last couple of days. I genuinely have cried because of just the amount of, nostalgia and, as I said, the care that was taken by all the people involved in making this film, in trying to make something really beautiful. And it's just really sad that that's not what happened. That they ended up having, it just started off the series of events, which led to Britt Allcroft getting kicked out of her own company, which led to Hit buying Thomas and turning into the weirdness that was kind of the season 8 to 12, which again, I used to think was quite good. And in hindsight, now rewatching them, I'm like, oh, those episodes, they actually were all the same. And then obviously the disaster, which was like the first 5 seasons of CGI, which I think was like 13 to 17 or something, or 16, when they were like absolutely garbage. And then, obviously we had that little period where the CGI was excellent, which was like the Andrew Brenner era, which I really enjoyed those episodes. And then Big World, Big Adventures, which is a bit how you doing, but I don't hate it. And then obviously if you have heard the news of Thomas going into like 2D anime style next year, that's different. I'm curious. I'm actually, going to be one of the few fans who is curious to see how they do it. Because if the show itself is still good, I'm kind of okay with them changing the format as much as I don't like it. I think if it means the show is better, then that's fine. But I just don't have a lot of faith that Mattel can actually do a show properly. So, I think it's really just interesting because this is kind of this is the beginning of the end of Thomas and Friends, really, if you cared about the original classic series. And I think that's just really unfortunate because you can just tell. I think if all the people who were involved in this movie knew what was going to happen to Thomas in 20 years, they wouldn't have made the movie because, that's not what they wanted at all. So, yeah, it's definitely a bit emotional, which is, maybe some people don't like crying, but that's fine. But yeah, I've been ranting on now for like 13 minutes about this film. So I would thoroughly recommend if you can pick it up, watch the deleted scenes and the special features. They're absolutely worth the money. I would have bought this just for the special features. If it did not even include the actual movie, I would have been okay just to pay that much for the special features. Definitely worth picking up. Could not recommend it highly enough. It's a great watch, really interesting. But yeah, otherwise, that's enough from me. I want you guys to go check it out. If you have no interest in the Magic Railroad, like I know some people think it's absolutely rubbish, then that's so fine. I don't expect this to change your mind. But if you've been a casual fan, or if you've been someone who's been really behind the director's cut series, this is absolutely going to be the Thomas movie for you. So I hope you like this video, hearing me talk about things. I've got plenty more reviews to come, so back to normal programming after this video. And as always, that's all we've got time for. This is XtremeTrainz.